Hello and welcome to Jessie James Beads. How are you doing today? I hope that you are very, very well and you've had a good, productive or restful day, whatever makes you happy. I'm Jem and I'm here today with Jessie James Beads for the monthly, magical monthly bead box. Always get that the wrong way around. I'm always going to transpose something. It's part of my nature. Anyway, we are looking at the Autumn Flight monthly bead box, and this features Do You Seek the Sun or Do You Follow the Moon? Why don't we have a quick look down on the board and see what you get in this box, because it's an absolutely bumper filled beautiful box indeed. There's a very definitive sunshiny tone and there's a very definitive lunar inspired tone to it as well, but everything is brought together with Autumn Flight, monarchs, moths, butterflies. Absolutely stunning collection of pieces in the this month. I'm just going to head over to Facebook to make sure that I am indeed being seen and that you can join me for today's free tutorial here on Facebook with Jessie James Beads. It does indeed look like we are broadcasting, so that's a good start. Celia is in from a sunny Bolton. Hello. Two Towers in from, I want to say, Florida. Hopefully everyone is well and all will be good with the day. So if you've never treated yourself to a monthly bead box, there is a link available, I believe, at jessiejamesbeads.com to see what previous month's boxes are still available. And Anne has joined us from California. Hello, Sweet Pea. Are you having it hot there again today? It's been chilly but bright here today, so I'm quite happy. So Autumn Flight, celebrating the magical journey of monarchs and moths. So I'm really quite fond of butterflies and moths. They've always been sort of fascinating, beautiful, flittering, if brief, creatures to enjoy. We have been joined by Danielle on the comments. Hello, gorgeous. How are you doing? I hope you are well. Stacey is joining us from Columbus in Ohio, and Clarice has joined us also. Hello, and I love the butterfly emoji. Jolly good. So this is the box we're working with today, Autumn Flight. So before we get cracking with our tutorial today, which I'll show you in a minute when I'm good and ready, I'm going to show you some of the pieces that you get in this box. Oh, these are so glorious. It would be so easy to just pop these onto a set of ear wires. Really, really gorgeous. Cherie is in from beautiful Oregon. Are you starting to get red leaves? We've got red leaves in the garden. They're beautiful. So you get one of these huge and beautiful fancy wing pairs. If you fancy something a little bit more diminutive, you also have these fluttery little lilac-y wings, which are beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. So I'm going to put things out of the way as we go through. If you didn't get a chance to see this, Tutau is from Houston. I'd love to be in Florida though. Do you know, I always think of you as somewhere warm, Tutau. I'm sorry, I think I get that wrong every time. A couple of really gorgeously detailed charms in here. I think, let me flip that over. Yes, you get a pair of the beautifully detailed, I wish I knew what butterfly it was, but it's one of them. And then you get one of these giant ones as well. Monarchs, I want to say, because it literally says right there in front of me. Good morning from Paula. Sunny and 14 degrees. Love these classes. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. Past subscription boxes are available at the link Danielle has pinned for you. This is outstanding. Now, my friend has sent me some two-part resin to play with, and I feel like I'm going to be filling some of these segments with resin. It's beautiful by itself though. We've got two incredible strands as well, Summer Migration and Dusk Flutter. We've got Sun and we've got Moon expressed as strands, and they are both absolutely stunning. I adore these large hole metallic beads. They are absolutely glorious. You get two on this strand as well, so you've got those two big strands to boot. We've got a warm mix and a cool mix. Now, full disclosure, can't remember which one's which. I imagine that the Monarch Morning... I'm not even going to guess. One of them was Monarch Morning, one of them was Empress Butterfly. You can work it out, because I'm just not that smart. So you get these two gorgeous bead mixes, and I've put these two together for our tutorial today. In these, as well, you've got some fluttering butterfly charms, which is tricky to say. Fluttering butterfly charms 5 times in a row without stumbling, and you have my admiration. So we've got those as well as these gorgeous filigree beads also. Fluttering butterfly charms, I believe I've already shown to you. Now these I just made in a nanosecond, literally in a nanosecond. Really beautiful metallic components, and I adore these beads also. Absolutely gorgeous. That's the Lunar Moth. Fall is rolling out, says Cherie. I'm so excited. Trudy's from suburban Chicago. Welcome to you. Melanie says, hey Jen, they're beautiful. Can't wait to see what you do with them. Thank you, my love. That's very kind. These happened in a second. Honestly, it's a very, very simple piece of 18 gauge wire through the centre. Simple loop on one end, small simple loop on the other end. They're opposing because my ear wires were straight. So that's a really easy to make, but I actually think really gorgeous little pair of earrings that happened very, very quickly. You've also got 2 lots of cup chain. Can I tell you how much I love making things with cup chain? It's tied itself in a knot, which as a thing is beautiful. I saw one of these made by my friend Karen a few years ago into a gorgeous tie design. So you've got a couple of those. They are gorgeous. Let's pop these bits and bobs out of the way. I'm going to show you. I need to take it off my neck because you may have noticed on the way in that that's where I put it. And now I need to get it off my neck and I can't see what I'm doing. Here we go. So let's show you what we're making together today. And there we are. I'm just going to put my beads out of the way so I don't knock them flying and show you what we're actually going to be working with. So let's pop these down. So one of these, it's a twisted step facet. Is it twisted? Yeah, it's slightly twisted because there's an undulation in the bead itself. Gorgeous glass bead with a beautiful, almost a classical marbling in the centre. Plus, you get that purple to gold shift on the surface. So you're going to be using one of those. We'll also be, yes, in answer to that, and they do, there are cup chain ends in the bag with those cup chains. So that does come in the box also. So I'm also going to be using 3 of these glossy round, I suggest they're about 4mm, and then these would be maybe a 2.5 by 3.5 rondelle in a gorgeously sultry deep purple colour. And I went through a lot of the beads to find what would fit perfectly inside these metallics. Now I love working with metallic components, but when you find metallic components that have a drill aperture through them as well, that's always super handy. Now let's find the wire. It's actually gone walkabout, so I'm going to be working with some copper coloured wire, which does show up really nicely on the board. But I would say you would want to work with a silver for this colourway. Of course, I'm going to be working with the sun element instead of the moon element, so hopefully that makes sense. So I've cut myself quite a short amount here just to get a feel for the wire, and I'm looking at 18 gauge round. I'm working right now in my hand with raw copper, which is quite soft actually, comparatively to the beautiful craft wires and German style wires that I use to create this piece. So I would suggest sticking with your 18 gauge to go through there. So I'm just going to give that a quick smooth through and get that nice and soft and smooth. I feel that this piece of wire has been used before, so hopefully it will operate nicely for us. We'll see how we go. So really there is no trick or difficulty to our tutorial today. What we're looking to do is to get the wire nice and straight, which I've failed to do so far. Like I said, I found this on my desk. It is 18 gauge round, but it's just a little bit funny in my hands. So I'm going to pass that through one side. Can you see that there's holes in these beautiful metallics? I'm just going to pass that through one side and then just gently, I'm not curving it, I'm just allowing that wire to move forwards. Let me just make sure I can see my feedback screen to make sure that's in shot. Yeah, that shows you what I want you to do. So that's going through, but I'm not putting a bend in it. It's just because the wire is a nice length and there's a good size hole in that metallic component to allow you to just let that move through freely. So once I know that I can lift that, I'm going to pop the beautiful, gorgeous round bead on. It's round flat, but with those step facets that go over the top. Now, Honestly, there is no difficulty to this at all, completely open to everyone. If I tilt that up slightly, you'll be able to see that I'm lining up the wire that's come through the bead with the hole in the metallic. I'm just going to very loosely hold those together, retract the wire, and then allow it to pass through the metallic component. So that by itself is a really beautiful thing because the sizing is absolutely perfect. I can spin the bead independently, or I can spin the metallic component independently. Absolutely adore these because it reminds me of an orrery. If you've never seen an orrery, it's an arrangement to demonstrate how the planets sit around our sun. Jessica has joined us. Hugs to you too, my lovely. Gail says, hello, Jem. Been waiting to see you live with you again. Welcome, Gail. Thank you for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to make with Jessie James beads. So all we've done really is just threaded these on in an intelligent direction. So once you've got those on, I'm going to make a wrapped loop up at the top for my bail. Now I thought, because there are two of everything you see here in the box. So I've got a selection here and a selection here. I've made them as pendants, but they would be really, really fancy as earrings as well. And you could have them facing with the beads to the right on one side of your head and to the left on the other side of your head. And I think they would make really lovely earrings because you can fiddle with them if you wanted to. I'm a bit of a fan of doing that, to be honest. So I started with around about 8 inches or so of the wire. If I didn't tell you that, I'm very sorry. I should have mentioned around about 8 inches of that 18 gauge round wire. So I'm going to make a wrapped loop up at the top. I've come about 2 inches from one end to put a right angle onto that wire. Now, if you are making them as earrings, you might like to keep this loop at the top we're about to make quite small so that it fits neatly onto your earring finding, whatever your earring finding of choice might be. If you're making it as a pendant, you will need to have a slightly larger circular form up at the top. So let's just go in with those round nose pliers, turn that loop around and then draw the end over, so that you get that round shape. I'm making this quite diminutive. Let's say that I want to turn this one into a pair of earrings. You can always apply the use of your gorgeous bail making pliers. I've got 6-step bail makers there to make a larger loop. If you don't have bail makers, but you do have these fabulous little, they're holding pliers for memory wire. They're really useful. If you've not got any of those, grab some of those also. So I'm just going to support those beads in the palm of my non-dominant hand whilst I wrap around the core wire. The core wire is that which passes down the centre of the bead and the metallic. Janet says, I like how your pendant looks, Jem, and I love the bead frame. Absolutely, that's what we're going to learn today. It's a beautiful technique, and it's always, it makes me smile when things just fit so perfectly. So yes, I can amuse myself for hours just spinning beads and metallics, and that they spin just independently of each other really pleases me, and it appeals to me endlessly. So I've made my circular form up on the end of that central core wire. Teresa is in from Tampa. Hello, my darling. I hope you're continuing to improve, my love. So let's hold the circular form, not touching where the wires cross over, but just supporting the circular part. And I'm using my hands today to draw that tail wire around. Now that's because I'm working with a very, very soft wire, and I've wrapped twice around that core. Slightly baggy, so I'm just going to very, very gently pinch that together. If you struggle to do that, there is a technique where you can use both pairs of pliers, and you can hold on to your circular form with one set of pliers. It's going to be tricky with that in the way. Let's just scooch it out the way. And then you can turn the core wire around with your second set of pliers. So I don't need it because my wire is super light and floopy. What I will do though is just tighten up that coil neatly and make sure that it sits in the orientation that makes me happy. Now what I will do is I will use this tail of wire here. We're left with around about 1 inch from earlier, and I'm going to make that into a coil now. Grabbing my round nose pliers to help me with that, and I'm going to sit that over the front of the loop, not necessarily to hide the loop but to add decoration. If you like slightly simpler lines and you don't think that you want one of those, another alternative is to simply trim away. Or what you can do is trim this one away up at the top, so I'm losing around about 1 inch of wire there. We'll tidy that up neatly. And you will then have a small residue of this tail wire, which we're going to bring up and around the outside in just a second. Jessica says, I live in Florida but in Maine visiting family. Had to pop in for a bit because I love Gem's creations. You are such a doll. Thank you, Jessica, for your support. So I'm going to orient the best side of my wrapped loop. So one side, you'll see more of the cut end. Spin it around. The other side, you'll see more of those coils that go around the core wire. That's slightly neater. So I'm going to designate that to be the front of my design. This is identical, so it doesn't matter which way that goes. What I'm going to do now is just hold that core wire underneath the design and push the wire out to the right. Now I'm going to go to the right again because I'm making this as a pendant, and that just is happy time making for me. If you're making these as earrings, you'll have one turning right and then one coming around to the left. So just bear in mind when you get to this stage, one will be going one way and one will be going the other way down at the base of that collection of components. So when you have got to this stage, what I'm going to do is just put a little bit of firmness into that bend down at the base here. So we've got a bend in the wire. It's around about 90 degrees, but it's quite soft. Just to ensure that that is nice and strong, I'm going to pinch that a couple of times with my pliers. So just open and close, always being mindful and respectful of the beads and not squishing down anywhere that you wouldn't want to damage. So I'm just opening and closing those pliers just firmly but slowly and under control. And I've now added strength to that angle, which means when I undertake the next part of the design, I won't be pulling too much out of shape. So Teresa was evacuated from her rehab centre due to Hurricane Ian flooding the area. Came home since house is not a flood zone. Need to go back for more rehab. You just take your time, Petal, get well, and hopefully nature will accommodate your requirements. So we've strengthened that angle now. What I'm going to do next is warm through the next couple of inches of wire. And what I'm doing is knocking the beads flying. What I'm doing is just running between thumb and forefinger, applying warmth. You don't have to use a flame for a technique like this. The wire will be compliant. So once I have got the design looking in the direction I want it to look, I'm checking again to make sure this is the prettiest side of my wrapped loop. I'm just going to bring that wire around, and what I'm doing is I'm just gently wiggling it, and I'm not being brutal with it at all. I'm just allowing that wire to form in a beautiful circular shape or a semicircular shape to give me that lovely arc. Now I don't want this arc to be too hard against the side of that metallic component. I do want it to snuggle up against it, but I don't want it to be too hard. So I need a tiny bit of a gap because I will be using a lighter gauge wire in just a second, which again has mysteriously disappeared off of the desk. This is just classic. I have a different colour, so I'm going to grab some of that now instead. A little bit of antique bronze colour. Now this is 26 gauge, definitely the best for the job. And I've got a scrap here on the table, which is approximately 10 inches. Now that's far more than we need, but it's what I have available. So what I'm going to do is make sure that I don't pull this beautiful arc shape that we've made out of form. One of the ways that you can do that, let's just pop that light wire down for a second, is to turn your bead and that housing just around through 90 degrees so you've got more access to this. So I'm just going to support this in the shape that I want it to stay. Just rotate your bead back in. You'll see that you've got that little bit of space. It's not too far out here, but it's not too close against that metallic component. So I turn that back through 90 degrees, pinch it with my non-dominant hand, and I'm just going to add a little bit of strength again to that wire, opening and closing. These are flat facing pliers. You could use chain nose. I'm using bent chain nose. You could use completely flat pliers. And I'm just making sure that the wire now knows. What I did when I warmed it is I made it softer. What I'm doing now is asking it to stay set. And I'm not going past the point which that wire crosses over the core up at the top. Let's scooch that back round out of the way. I'm just hardening the wire by applying pressure. Now it's not a huge amount of pressure as if you're hammering it. It's just a little bit firmer. And what you'll see is that that is just a little bit more composed and ready to work. So I'm now going to add in that scrap of 26 gauge wire. Helpfully, this is a different colour, so it will show up nicely. So this is probably, let's say probably about 12 inches actually, a little bit longer than I anticipated. It's very, very springy, so I'm going to tuck one of those out under the desk out of the way. And I'm going to lay about ½ an inch over the top of the wire further along that tail. The reason I'm going to start coiling around the wire up here is because it's easier for you to see what we need to do. So I'm just going to push the wire around. We want to make a nice, neat coil. Now I would say probably 5 turns of wire in this nice thin 26 gauge, which is equivalent in the UK to 0.4 Celia, is just to bring that around, get that end tucked away, and if it's slightly baggy in any way, I can just gently scooch that all down together. 5 turns in a 26 gauge wire is nice and strong. It will stay on that wire now. So what I need to do is to scooch this all the way along that lovely arc we just created and bring it down to the base of the design. So you can just push that along nicely. It doesn't really mark the wire, but we're going to cover much of this wire with beads and more wire anyway, so don't worry if there's a little bit of tool marking on it. So because of the number of beads that I found in the pot, I oriented them, lined them up and decided that I would go for the rondelle, then the round, and that then I would have enough to make a demonstration piece and to show you the complete technique today as well. So you can pop your assembly down on the board and just go to the other end of your wire, find that other end and start your first bead. Now because it's such a beautiful bead box to work with, you've got multiple choices about which beads you might want to add around the outside. I would say probably 4mm is the largest you might want to use because of the size of the form you're working with. However, if you do have quick links that you want to employ in a design like this, you can certainly up the side of those supporting cast. Now my finer gauge wire is coming from underneath that gorgeous arc that we've made. Melanie, that's very, very kind of you, and I appreciate your beautiful words. Thank you so much. So the finer gauge wire comes from underneath the arc shape. I push the bead against the arc shape, pinch that into formation. What I need to do now is bring the tail of wire, and this is that long loose scrap of 26 gauge, and I'm going to take that over the top of the arc, but post the end down in between the frame, the beautiful metallic frame, and our arc shape. So if I just pull that down really slowly, you can see it's very, very springy wire. It's not the best for the job. And then I'm just going to pull that taut, but not so taut that I pull this arc of wire out of shape too much. And that's why when you're working with a raw copper like I am today, just adding those few moments of squishy squishy will harden the wire enough to make this a little bit easier. Leah is in. Hi Gem, I'm late, sorry, looks like a pretty project. You are very welcome here. You can always catch up on replay later. But basically we've wrapped loop, we've come through, we've done a right angle. We've firmed up the wire in that arc shape. So what I'm going to do now is show you a slightly different way that you can rotate around this arc of wire. So in order to speed things up slightly, what we're going to do is just gently lift the tail of wire up. And if I show you that, this is the front side of the pendant here. This is the rear side of the pendant or the earring. So I'm just lifting and curling just the very tail up ever so slightly. And that means what I can do now is pull firmly on the arc shape that we made, hold that bead in position, and just scooch the wire around that elevated section and draw it down. Now I'm going to use my nails, and I'm going to show you what sort of speed I would normally do this at, and then on the next one I'm going to slow it right down. So that's 2 wraps, 3 wraps, push, 4 wraps, push, 5 wraps, push, and my fine wire is still coming away underneath on that little arc around the outside. So to tidy that up, I'm going to scooch those 5 wraps all up against each other, and then we're going to pick the next bead. So as I mentioned before, I chose this combination of beads because it meant I could show you the same thing as I created before the show. Now me threading beads is always the least fun part of any tutorial because I can't see the holes and I can't find my way in. Classic Gem that. So I'm going to, again, the finer gauge wire is coming underneath the arc shape that we've created. I'm going to pinch the bead against the arc shape, take the tail of the finer gauge wire, over the top of that end of the arc and just pull that firmly down. Now what I'm doing here is I'm using my nail to support the arc as well. So even though I'm pulling with the tail of wire in this direction away from the assembly, I'm supporting it at the same time. And this is how to keep the shape that you've created as much as possible. So because I've only gone over the top of that little arc of wire down the bottom once, I need to now repeat that 4 times. So I bring the tail of the wire over the top and down between the metallic component and the arc. So that's 2 wraps. Take the tail of the wire down between those 2 parts, 3 wraps, tail of wire down, 4 wraps, and then the 5th wrap brings that wire back down again. So when you are adding a bead to wire, I think it looks quite pretty. I think it does. I think it's really, really pretty. But the key thing to remember with a design like this is if your wire is starting, your finer gauge wire, is starting underneath the frame that you're using, in this case it's the arc of wire, then it needs to go through the bead and then it needs to go on top. So it's always travelling. So in this instance, from underneath the arc of wire, through the bead, hold the bead, over the top of the arc of wire. Now we're wiring just to this arc shape frame we've made. Sometimes you might want to experiment and try taking your tail of wire, inside a metallic component as well, and then you can start working out patterns. In this instance, if you were to do that, your inner bead would lose the ability to spin freely because the fit is so perfect. I don't know who commissioned this particular selection of beads and components, but it's made me very happy. So we've got 2 wraps now around that arc-shaped frame, so I need to get that finished. I'm going to just allow the bead component to come out of the way. That's 3 wraps. Bring the wire down and through, 4 wraps. Bring the wire down and through, that's 5 wraps. If you find that those are a little bit baggy, you can scooch those coils so they sit neatly against each other. And it's just a case of continuing along until we've added all of the beads, or we run out of time. So that in essence is the project. I'm going to whiz through the next couple of bits, and if you have any questions at all, please do address them now. If Danielle can help, I'm sure that she will. I'm going to put these last couple of beads on because I want to show you a complete project today. I want to show you how to tie this off at the top. So we're working today with the beautiful MMBB box, which is what is known in Jessie James's jewel theme. So it's sun and moon, which reminds me of a game my son used to play a few years ago. Once around, we're going to go for 5 times again. Now I will find that the arc shape up at the top is not quite as strong, so if I do pull that out of shape, I'm able to just gently reform that as I go. So what I might do is make this one slightly smaller and not add those top 2, because otherwise you're going to get bored of me doing the same thing. I'm going to cut my wire when I get to the end. So I've cut the thin wire that we're using to add beads, not the thick wire. And I'm going to make sure that those are all neat and tidy little coils that we've got together. What I can do with a design like this is space out those bead additions. So if I just draw this out gently, I've just deformed the wire slightly, but it's for a purpose. It's to show you that you can open up these wraps ever so slightly. So I'm going to spread them out so that this one has just got the 5 beads. And I'm just very, very gently prising those apart. And when I bring that wire back up at the top, it now fills the design space, so you could even take that a little bit further out if you wanted to. So once you've added the number of beads that will make you happy, in this instance I've gone for 5 on this design, and I can spread them a little bit wider later on. What I need to do is take this tail of wire around that first core section that we wrapped when we made our wrapped loop earlier on. So what will want to happen is that when you start bringing this tail of wire around the core section, it will want to draw across the surface of your bead. Well, you don't want it to do that, otherwise nothing's going to spin. So you need to pinch that quite firmly to make sure that you're not using too much of this tail of wire. So I'm giving that a really lovely warm. When I was hardening the arc shape earlier, some of that hardness tends to travel along copper. It's conductive like that. So I'm making this super warm again, making sure that I do have enough space to fit this on without trapping anything. If I have pulled it out of shape, I can give it a little bit of a wiggle just to make sure I'm happy. So let's give that a really good pinch, and you can use your metallic form to help you. And then we're going to draw that tail around the neck over the top of those wraps that we made earlier. So you can see that that's quite tight against the spinny bit, but the spinny bit is still spinning. I am just going to tighten that up slightly and just turn that backwards ever such a little bit. So if I just hold the bail for a second, you can see that everything is still mobile. This is why it reminded me of an orrery, which is really hard to say if you're me. So I'm going to now trim to around about 1.25 inches. So in the end, we used a little bit less wire, which is absolutely fine. There's always going to be use for those spare sections. This is still nice and warm. What we're going to do is take those round nose pliers and create a coil to sit over the face of the design. So start off by creating a round form, push the round form into the tip of my non-dominant forefinger, and slowly make a really neat coil. Now when you get to the end, you see that's starting to get really, really close now. What we're going to do is just keep going until that sits in the centre of that bail. Now it's sticking out at a funny angle at the moment, which is absolutely fine because that's how it's easier to make them. It's sticking forwards. You have the choice of bringing this down or up. Now I'm going to take that one up, and to do that, if I grip the coil, I'll show you that from a different angle. I'm just going to push that back up against the wrapped loop that we made. So you've hidden the wrapped loop up at the top, and I really like that because it can look like an extension of your wire work, and then it's a mystery as to how it hangs. What you could do is bring that loop down, but if you bring the loop down and it's large, you can stop the spinning effect, and I really like the spinning effect. If you wanted to trap that, what you can do is bring the coil in the opposite direction. So let's just draw that down, and I'll show you what it does. There we go. So if you push that down over the face of the design, it will stop that from moving overly much. It just traps it in position. You can push that down harder if you need to. Again, always being respectful of your beads. I prefer to have that as a spinning design, but I'm giving you choices there. And I've still got a couple of spare beads to play with. Let's get my block out of the way. Let's wake this up. I'm still here, it's still me. How are you? Have you enjoyed the MMBB with the Autumn Flight, the Sun and the Moon? That's such a beautiful collection of beads. I've really been inspired by the colours and the absolutely gorgeous butterfly charms that you get in this one. Let's have a quick gander. It's these colours. Oh, I didn't even show you. There's some huge metallics in that one. It's definitely well worth it. If you've never had one of the Jessie James monthly bead boxes, it's a great one to start on. So you can check the link that our lovely Danielle added for you, and that will take you to where you can grab previous month's MMBBs. But do consider a sub because it's a beautiful way to be inspired. I am going to check back on the comments in just a moment. If you have any questions that I've missed, I will address them just as quickly as I can. And I look forward to coming back and seeing you next week. Next Thursday at 1 PM Eastern, I'm going to be designing with this little baby. So if you fancy joining me on the live and making along, grab yourself one of those and get that shipped ASAP. Next up, very, very soon, it's candy cane making time. I can't tell you how excited I am to be working with Jessie James Beads and Beads of Courage again. Sarah's got lots of information to impart to you about the candy cane and its part in history. If you are looking to sign up, drop me an inbox, nudge nudge, wink wink, because I might have a code for you. Yes, so do feel free to get in touch. As I said, I will absolutely check back on the comments to make sure I haven't missed anything. But I'll be back beading We Bead Pink next week, same time, same place. And I will be looking forward to candy cane fun with you if you're joining us for the winter classes, which are coming up next month, I believe. Whew, I don't know, the time seems to be whizzing by without my permission. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for joining me. Do inbox me if you're thinking of winter workshop, because I have something that you might like to know. Take care. Mwah! I will see you guys very, very soon. Bye for now.